This is anything but a man in a fursuit. There wasn't spandex, there wasn't Velcro, there wasn't anything but relatively cheap costume fur available, especially to an amateur who might be trying to pull off a hoax.
Now, for the first time, we have created a global map of Bigfoot sightings. More than 10,000 from the last 200 years. At first, the sightings appear random, but closer scientific analysis reveals hidden but unmistakable patterns. More than 95% of all recorded sightings take place in Asia or North America. Nearly 70% of these are at high altitude and dense tree cover. There are also distinct hotspots, where sightings are far more common than elsewhere. One is the Himalayas. Here, generations of eyewitnesses describe a gigantic snow ape, the Yeti. 2,000 miles south on the islands of Indonesia, locals talk of a wild ape man called Orang Pendek. While up in Central Asia, sightings of ancient Neanderthal-type humans go back centuries. And here in the wilderness of North America, they see a giant ape-like beast. Sasquatch. This Sasquatch rock art from Northern California was painted in 500 AD. How do you explain hundreds of encounters stretching back over centuries? Something is out there. But what?
First of all, it was a bright sunny day, as you can see. And you could see her muscles rippling in her shoulder, in her thigh, as she walks. Jerry Romney, the guy they said was in the suit, they stuck him with breasts. What would they do that for? Why go to the trouble? She left tracks in the hard-packed sand of the creek bed. 1 inch deep. We have pictures, we have casts, no question, inch deep. So we know that as she stood there doing this, she weighed 600 to 800 pounds. Fake that. Solid proof that that's not a human being in a suit.
In the hunt for Bigfoot, there's still no definitive proof that the creature exists. The best clue may be the famed Patterson-Gimlin film. The investigative team turns to the biomechanics of the Patterson Bigfoot to determine how it moves. They begin by overlaying a skeleton onto the figure in the film. Then they animate it to match its exact movements. Although many argue that its walk looks similar to a human, the skeletal overlay reveals a remarkable difference. A normal human walks with a stiff-legged gait, with extended leg, knees straight, and ankle pointing upwards. Humans literally pole vault over the leg with each step. And with each step, the head bobs up and down. And the heel makes a pronounced initial ground strike. A skeletal overlay of the Patterson film reveals a more awkward stride, displaying what is known as a compliant gait. The body leans forward, and the knees remain flexed or bent. Most notably, the foot lands flat, distributing weight over the entire sole without the characteristic human heel strike. The data is dramatic. The flat-footed walk of the figure in the Patterson film also supports the flat profile of the ape-like footprints examined by Dr. Meldrum. Expert costume designer Peter Brook goes behind the scenes to seek an answer. In the wardrobe department, Brook works for one of the finest creature suit makers in Hollywood, Jim Henson's Creature Shop, and he is very familiar with the most famous Bigfoot image of all time. For a model, he uses a Hollywood-style handcrafted suit. It took a team of 4 professional designers 3 months to fabricate this costume.
Well, in terms of the suit, generally there's 2 elements to the suit. There's the understructure, and the muscle suit, and then there's the fur suit, which you can see here.
So does Roger Patterson's film show a creature or a man in a costume? In the Bigfoot film, the creature has 3 notable attributes. First, its arms are very long. Brooke can explain that away with simple arm extensions, typical in gorilla costumes. But the creature also has a firm musculature beneath its skin, which is harder to explain. An understructure that complex was almost unheard of in even the best Hollywood costumes of the late 1960s. The other striking attribute appearing in the film is that the creature's fur seems to adhere to the form and contours of its body.
So here's the fur skin, if you like, which goes over the muscle suit. The fur skin, this is essentially made up of the 4-way stretch fur fabric.
But 4-way stretch fur like this did not exist until the 1980s. The costume fur common in Roger Patterson's time was too stiff to be form-fitted to an actor's body or an undersuit.
It does seem to stretch. I don't know how they would have done that in 1967, but it does seem to stretch.
So if such a suit was virtually unavailable at the time, that begs the question of whether the Bigfoot was real.
While studying the Patterson footage, a large visible bulge is seen on the leg of the subject.
Right there. Stop there, and you can actually go 1 frame forward.
While inconclusive, it does in fact raise additional questions about how a fake monkey suit could be constructed with such detail over 35 years ago.
It could be some sort of traumatic pathology, a rupture of the IT or iliotibial band, allowing the underlying muscle to selectively bulge through in that area.
You know, first of all, I would say that would be characteristic of at least a partial rupture of part of the quadriceps. There's also the IT band, or the iliotibial band, that runs through the area also. You know, a creature that would have that type of a rupture would certainly have compromised gait of some sort.
The film's creature seems to have more anatomical detail than 1967 costume technology allowed. In the film, several muscle groups are visible in the lower limbs, in the gluteus maximus, the rectus femoris, and the gastrocnemius. Tightening and slackening of the Achilles tendon is also evident as the heel becomes more prominent during the swing phase of its step. Massive erector muscles can be seen flanking the lower back, lining up with the 5-degree forward lean of the torso. The shoulder blade is clearly visible during the walk and look-back phase. The large trapezius muscle, with its high attachment to the back of the skull, is consistent with the smaller brain case, sagittal crest, and relatively large jaws seen in gorillas. And most peculiar, breasts, visible as the creature looks back. All factors that make a case for a living creature, not a vintage Hollywood costume. With such a realistic suit, beyond even Hollywood's capabilities at the time, the team doubts the Hollywood connection.
Since then, the film has been subjected to 40 years of scientific scrutiny. From biometric analysis of the creature's gait and stride length, to markers showing its height in the natural environment, no one has managed to prove it's a fake.
Animals are there at home in their environment, and we're often the intruder, the visitor, and evading human detection is not that difficult.
Just how well animals can live undetected by man was proven by this incredible video footage shot in 2007. It's almost all the evidence we have of a new species of man-sized primate, the billy ape. Found in the remote forest of Congo, Africa, it took primatologists a year to track down and film these giant-sized 300-pound chimps. But local people had talked about them for generations. Anna Nakaris has discovered 6 new species of primates.
I believe very much in what local people say. And if local people tell me something is there, I have a suspicion that it may be, even if I haven't seen it.
The team points to the discovery of the billy ape as a positive indicator for Bigfoot. If a new species as large as this has managed to live undetected by science for so long, could other species of giant ape-like creatures still be out there? Our experts' global map reveals hundreds of sightings of giant Neanderthal-like humans all across Asia. The greatest concentration of these is in the Caucasus Mountains, south of Russia. These sightings became so numerous that over time the creatures were given a name. They are called Almas, or Almasti, meaning wild people. One of the most compelling and reliable of all the reports about the Almas was documented in 1925. General Mikhail Stepanovich Topilsky of the Russian Red Army attempted to surprise what he'd been informed were rebel soldiers hiding in a remote cave. The Russians could hear something moving inside. To their horror, the general and his men discovered they had gunned down not a modern enemy, but some sort of prehistoric human.
The dead creature lay with his eyes open and his teeth bared. In general, the hair was very thick, without any underfur. The knees were completely bare of hair, and there were callous growths on them. The color of the face was dark. The nose was flat, with a deeply sunken bridge.
Well, the eyewitness descriptions of the Almas, a heavily muscled body with a thick torso, deep-set eyes and heavy brows and very prominent cheekbones and thick jaws, could easily represent a Neanderthal.
But Neanderthals were only one of what we are now discovering to be a whole range of different types of early human. The film seems too realistic to be a fake creature, created by a rookie filmmaker.
The bits of the anatomy just look very convincing. There appears to be shorter hair, slightly lighter hair around the waist. It just looks like the way a silverback's back narrows in a little bit and has that short hair there compared to the longer hair on the arms. It just looks like a silverback. And in 1967, most people had not seen photographs of gorillas. I think it's a very exciting bit of film.
But the team disagree on the head turn.
The part that really bothers me the most is the turn to look towards the camera. Looks so human to me.
But after hundreds of hours tracking gorillas in the wild, Ian Redmond is intimately familiar with how they move.
If you work with great apes, you see that many of those mannerisms, the way you stop, listen, look, are actually shared by all the great apes, human and non-human.
This remarkable footage of a gorilla, shot in a wildlife park, shows how closely they can resemble humans when walking on 2 legs.
This is anything but just a man in a fursuit. There wasn't spandex, there wasn't Velcro, there wasn't anything but relatively cheap costume fur available, especially to an amateur who might be trying to pull off a hoax. If it's a hoax, it really stands as one of the most sophisticated accomplishments of its time. This is anything but a man in a fursuit. There wasn't spandex.